Well, hey, welcome back to In the Growth Space. My name is David McGlennon, and I'm really grateful that you're here with me here today. It's my belief that if we're going to grow, both personally and professionally, we've got to be able to learn new things. And that kind of a mindset, that learning model, that learning process, it involves failure. And if you think about it, we never do something new right the first time, right? If we're doing something new, it's going to take some failure. It's going to take some trial and error. And honestly, trying something new is all about getting in that space that's just outside of our comfort zone. And before we get into that thing, that imaginary barrier that I call the terror barrier. And whenever we bump up against that terror barrier, it's so easy to go back into our comfort zone and just say, hey, it's not worth it. So really, growth is just being persistent enough to really bust through the terror barrier and really getting through that discomfort of doing something new. And in this part of this season, season 3 here of the podcast, we've been talking about a theme of listening generously and speaking straight. And those are some key behaviors, some key fundamentals to success in our growth path. And today I'm actually talking with an entrepreneur. His name is Bryan Clayton, and he's got a company by the name of GreenPal. And he's going to talk about his path to success. And I think he is going to demonstrate this idea of getting outside of your comfort zone, doing something new, being persistent enough to just bust through the terror barrier and just really getting good at being comfortable, being uncomfortable. But GreenPal, as a company, has an app, or it is an app that Entrepreneur Magazine has dubbed the Uber for lawn mowing service. I think it's a brilliant idea. And Bryan has been a successful entrepreneur. He is the co-founder of GreenPal. And he was born and raised in Nashville, Tennessee. And he developed an early interest in entrepreneurship. And he started his first business at the age of 13, mowing lawns in the neighborhood. And we get into that story just a little bit. So I'm excited for you to hear that. But then after completing high school, Bryan continued to grow his landscaping business, and he eventually founded the company called Peachtree. And that then began to grow into really one of the largest landscaping companies in Tennessee. Then under Bryan's leadership, that company, Peachtree, generated over $10 million a year in annual revenue. And then they were acquired by Lusa Holdings, which is a national company in one of the largest acquisitions in the landscaping industry. Then following that acquisition, Bryan took a little bit of a sabbatical. And so we talked just a little bit of that. And I think there's some really interesting learnings in there as well. And then, of course, he turned his focus to his new venture, GreenPal. And GreenPal has grown. It's grown really rapidly. If you can imagine, Uber for your lawn service, you go on and you say, hey, I need my lawn mowed tomorrow. His app will do that for you. It'll connect you with a service provider. And they now serve over 200,000 active users. They've completed thousands of transactions every day. And the company has been recognized by a lot of different publications, Entrepreneur Magazine being one of them. And that's the magazine that dubbed it the Uber for lawn care. And what's interesting too is Bryan's business, his company, is really like self-funded. In other words, it hasn't acquired any outside equity or outside investment. And that's really, really unheard of in today's startup world. And the company is, doing really well. It's reported to be doing over $30 million a year in revenue. And, for a bootstrapped business, that's really remarkable. I really loved this conversation with Bryan, not only about business growth, but really personal and leadership growth as well. I know that you're going to get so many takeaways from this episode, and I just want to invite you that when you hear something that Bryan says that really clicks with you, or something that we share in this episode, I'd love for you to just to jot it down and maybe go to your podcast app, write a review for the podcast, and then be able to share it back with us and the team. I would really really love that, and it would really help us to really continue to forge the relationship that hopefully is not just one way, but we can hear back from you as well. Well, hey, let's go ahead and get into the conversation with Bryan Clayton right now. Well, hey, Bryan, thank you so much for being here in the growth space, and just really excited to have you on today, and really just to have this conversation with you.
Well, thanks for having me on, David. It's great to be here.
Yeah, as I looked at your story and just kind of heard, I listened to you on some other podcasts. I thought, man, you've just got such an amazing growth journey, and I'd love to have you just share a little bit about kind of what does that growth journey look like for you? And I know you're an entrepreneur, and you've been through a number of different entrepreneurial endeavors, and so I'd love to just kind of maybe paint the picture of the larger picture of the journey.
Yeah, it's a great question because I think if you're doing any kind of business, small, medium, or large, and you're putting your like heart and soul into it, you as a person evolve into a whole new person every year or two.
Yeah.
And that's the way I've experienced it now, I guess 22 years in entrepreneurship. Today, I'm CEO and co-founder of a company called GreenPal, which is an app that is works like Instacart or DoorDash or Uber, but for lawn maintenance services. So
Love that.
like homeowners can use it to hire a lawn care service at a few taps on their smartphone rather than calling all over the place.
Nice.
But before that, I actually had a lawn mowing business. I mowed grass in high school as a way to make extra cash, and
I love that.
something about that little small business stuck with me. I thought this could be my thing. This could be my lane in life. And
Yeah.
so I just kind of threw everything I had into growing that little lawn care business, and year after year just made little goals, and over a 15-year period of time built it into a pretty large company, around 150 employees.
Wow.
And then it was acquired in 2013. And after that, I took a little bit of time off, and then I took everything I learned in that first journey and poured it into GreenPal. And now GreenPal is like a 10-year overnight success. It's taken us about a decade to get where we are, but now we're nationwide in the United States, around 300,000 people using GreenPal to get their grass cut.
That's amazing. You said something there that I just intrigued me a moment, and I'd love to just hear your thoughts. You said you took some time off after you sold the first business. What was that like for you? I mean, so I just came off of a sabbatical, and so I'm kind of thinking that's where my head's at. And I'm thinking, wow, that's kind of a cool thing for you to do, to be able to take some time. What did that look like for you, or what did that time off look like for you?
Yeah, it was very surprising. Caught me off guard because I thought I was going to sell the company and then like not necessarily like live the good life, but like take it down a couple notches.
Sure.
I thought that I was just going to do some like passive investing and maybe some real estate investing and things like that. And I learned a lot about myself in that
Mm,
6 months, maybe it was like 10 months, that I was really getting fulfilled by my business. That my
mm,
business was the thing that was causing my life to be interesting in a way.
yeah.
And looking back, it kind of makes sense. I read a book by Donald Miller called "A Thousand Miles in a Million Years," and in that book, he talks about to live an interesting life, you have to have an interesting story.
Yeah.
And I'm reading that book. I'm like, yeah, my business is the storyline to my life.
Yeah.
And when I sold my first company and did what I thought I wanted to do, which was travel and like sit on a beach, it was almost like you're watching a movie and then it got really boring and it got really crappy.
That's
It was
funny.
almost like a movie where like the first half was cool and interesting and the second half sucked. And so that's how it's like that bothered me, and I didn't really want to get back in the game. I didn't want to go through the challenges of starting a business. Elon Musk says that starting a startup is like chewing glass, but you come to love the taste of your own blood. And I didn't want to go through that again, but
Yeah,
I
right.
was kind of drawn back to get into the game. I thought I need a project, I need a mission, I need something challenging, and I was kicking around the idea for GreenPal really for years before that kind of app should exist in the world.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, why can't it be me? Why can't I lead a team to do that? And built a little team. I thought it was going to be pretty easy. I thought it was going to be like a couple year deal, and now here we are 10 years in, still working on the same sets of challenges that we were 10 years ago. How do we make ordering a lawn mowing service as easy as pushing a button?
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. And I love the fact that you thought about the meaning of your work in that time period, because it's funny because I have an uncle who's retired like 3 times, and he keeps going back because he in one of our conversations he said, David, I can only play golf so much, there's only
Right.
so much golf you can play. And he gains meaning from that. I thought it was really fascinating to hear you say that, because I think that work does give us meaning, and it gives the storyline of our life. And I don't think there's a lot of leaders that maybe think that way.
Yeah, it's funny. You see it with the big dogs, like how long is Jeff Bezos really going to sit on a yacht?
Yeah, right.
I expect him to come back and run Amazon or run for president or something
Something,
at
yeah.
some point. It's like these guys never, even though guys that have it all, never sit idle long. They're always getting back in the game, and there's something about, I think, the human spirit that's driving them to do that. And I've
Yeah.
experienced it at a very small level, that if you get complacent, you don't have a mission, and you don't have a reason to get out
Mm,
of bed in the morning and crush it,
yeah.
it doesn't feel very good. It feels
Yeah.
empty. And for me, my business, however, I'm not in some kind of big glamorous business. I ran a lawn care company and grew it to something, and now I run an app that makes lawn mowing as easy as pushing a button. I'm not doing big glamorous world changing stuff here, but it is the mission for my life,
Yeah.
and it is the answer to the question, if it wasn't for me, then what? And for
Right.
me, the business is always the answer to that question. Why do I need to get out of bed this morning? Why does it matter? What
Yeah.
what what will happen if I didn't? And the answer is, there's 32,000 contractors now that use GreenPal to run their little business, and that's
Amazing.
that's a big responsibility that I take very seriously, and that's kind of my life's purpose. It's, if it wasn't for me, then there's some contractor, in Georgia somewhere that's not going to be able to mow 20 yards today and
Yeah.
and make their mortgage payment. That's very real, and so
Right.
that's important to me.
Man, that's that's amazing, and it really triggers a thought to me, and I think I heard you say this on another podcast about people. It really is about people, and I think that growing a business, growing even our own leadership and our own leadership journey, is about helping other people, helping them to fulfill their dreams, and I think maybe talk a little bit about that, because as you grew your business, you really focused on people and if I'm not mistaken, culture as well, and that you saw that as a really important part of your business growth.
It's a big part of it. And I'm kind of introverted by nature, so I had to learn how to do this stuff the hard way, and come into my leadership style kicking and screaming.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, when you reach like maybe level 3 or 4 of the game, you realize that, wow, this isn't about me.
Mm,
This is about the people that depend on this business, my employees, my stakeholders, the people that rely on this company for their livelihood. And then that like unlocks a new level of the game, where you are more fulfilled by this next level. And I've experienced that now twice, and it is true. I recently took a road trip through Alaska with my nephew, and I really got into the book, Into the Wild, and I started
oh
reading that
yeah.
book, and the main character in that book says, happiness is only real when shared.
Mm,
And in that book, he kind of goes into the wild and goes into this period of isolation for a long period of time. And he realizes that about himself, that really happiness is only real when shared. And I think you can replace happiness with success
yeah.
and say success is only real when shared. And so
Love
and
that.
so the true success is like, there's people in your orbit, there's people in your company, there's employees, there's stakeholders, there's partners, and they're being lifted up because they're in business with you. And that is true success. It's planting seeds where other people can prosper and grow
Mm,
alongside you. That's a lot of fun, because when you
yeah.
hoard it all for yourself and go it alone, it's not as fun.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not even real.
Right.
And I've tried to do it that way because I'm an introvert. I really would just rather sit in a room by myself with a laptop, but it's that's not the path. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Well, and I'm curious too, as you've realized that about yourself and as you've, focused on that people aspect of your businesses, like how important was that? And maybe like what was the impact that had on the success of the business?
Yeah, totally. I did this so wrong in my first company. I remember it very clearly. One day, I was maybe year 7 or 8, and we were going through the first like the '08 financial crisis. So business was tough.
Sure.
And I remember driving to the office, and I thought, this sucks. I hate this. Uh, I hate our customers. Employees are pissing me off.
Yep.
And
Yep.
why is it like this? And why is this happening to me? And then something clicked in my head. Something like maybe a voice said in my head, "Hey, you idiot, you built this. this is this is literally a reflection of you."
Yeah.
And I think as the founder, you get exactly the company culture you deserve. You get exactly the level of enthusiasm from your people that you deserve. They're mirroring your enthusiasm. They're mirroring your commitment. They're mirroring your level of intensity that you're bringing to the business. The vibrations that you're bringing, they're mirroring that. And I had to learn that the hard way. I was like, no, my attitude sucks. I'm pissed off. I'm bringing this to the office, and at the time maybe there's 50 or 60 people there, and they're mirroring my vibe. So it took like 2 years to figure it out and fix it, and realize that at the end of the day, I was in the servitude business. I was literally, I had to care and give a crap about my people and care where they were trying to go in life, and how did the business fit into that. And it took a while. It took a while for me to learn it. It took a while for me to implement it and to see the results. But the results were, it went from a miserable place to work to one that was fun, that I enjoyed, and inevitably probably the thing that enabled the business to get acquired by a much bigger outfit was because we had that vibrant energy at the core of it.
Yeah, I think that's really fascinating that you said that, because to me it's a lot about self-awareness and becoming self-aware that the culture is a reflection of me as the leader, and that vibe, that feel of the people is a reflection of me. How did you, like, I know you said, something like, it came to you, but how did you really come to that self-awareness? Because I think that a lot of leaders don't, they stay in an unaware state, and they keep trying to power ahead, and maybe hit their head against the wall. Maybe I'm the only one, but
No,
it's
true.
Yeah, how did you come to that awareness?
It was a total bottoming out. It was a total, everybody, literally, I mean, literally everybody in the company was pretty much pissed off on a daily basis. I was not happy running the business. Our customers, and it was reflecting in the services that we rendered to our customers. They were calling in, complaining all the time because we weren't hitting certain goals and meeting their expectations. And so it was a total utter bottoming out until I had to like look in the mirror. And I was lucky because I had stumbled onto some John Maxwell stuff at the time. And these were like books that I bought and like put on a shelf somewhere and forgot about.
Yeah.
But I started reading a couple of this guy's books, and he really lays it out, how leadership is servitude. And it's like, okay, yeah, sure, that sounds great and that's fluffy. But the more and more I started reading over his materials, and then trying to like a friend told me, look, just try this. Go into the office tomorrow and just bring donuts for everybody and just see what happens.
Yeah.
And I did that. And rather than going to the office, like passing by the secretary, hey, I went in, it's like, hey, how you doing? I passed by Dunkin' Donuts, thought I'd bring donuts for everybody. And like, they looked at me like I was weird. Like, what's wrong with
happening?
him? Yeah. Has he lost his mind?
That's great.
And so then I started like, okay, that was kind of funny what happened. It was kind of a neat experiment, but that was revealing. Like, man, they really do look at me like I'm a jerk. And I don't think I'm a jerk, but maybe I am. And so I think one of the most self-aware exercises, like the best exercise you can do in building self-awareness is run a small business. Even if you're running a home cleaning company with one helper, it'll teach you things about yourself you didn't know.
Yeah.
And because at the end of the day, the marketplace is the ultimate judge, and the marketplace is a relentless purveyor of feedback, telling you everywhere your business is coming up short. And a lot of times it comes back to the founder's leadership style. And so that's going to always be there, letting you know where you need to work on and where you need to improve. And so that's how it happened for me. I wish I could have saved myself 5 years of headache had I got some coaching early on, maybe, or something, but it was just something I had to learn the hard way.
Yeah. You know, something you said kind of captivated my thought for a second, and that is so one of the things that we're doing, you know, on the podcast and even in my my leadership groups is we're kind of taking these themes of culture, of cultural behaviors. I call them fundamentals, and two of those behaviors that we're kind of talking about right now are listening generously and then speaking straight. And I think that we can't speak straight unless we listen generously first. And it sounds like to me, like some of the things that you're demonstrating is almost that speak straight conversation with yourself. You had to kind of speak straight to yourself. And what I mean about speak straight is like, hey, I got to tell the truth. I got to be direct, but yet I got to move the situation forward. I need to move it in a direction that's positive, that's generative. And I'm curious if that like resonates with you at all.
It's really easy to BS your own self, yourself, right? You know, and a mentor told me one time some really good advice was to not believe your own BS, and that's easier said than done. It's really hard to see those blind spots. And I mean, the few times I've done like a like a total 360 solicitation of feedback from people that work for me was some of the most painful moments in my life, but it was what I needed, right? Sure. And so it is hard, and it's hard for everybody. So don't think it's just you. But I think I think to not believe your own BS, and when you find faults in others, maybe people that work for you and stuff, ask yourself the same question about yourself. It's like, okay, well, yeah, they're imperfect in this way, but what am I not seeing about myself? You know, like that I'm also doing, and it's because it's not always you're the common denominator in all of these things, right? And so that's how I've dealt with it, but I'm not really good at it. I try to at least once a year, just, you know, now our team's much smaller, it's only 40 people, but I try to solicit that feedback, and I try to take it to heart. You can't take all of it to heart, because sometimes it's not well founded. But if you it's like, I don't need to see 5 people trip over a piece of carpet and know we got to fix that carpet. You know, it's like if you start seeing commonalities, you know, there's some opportunities you need to work on, and getting a coach helps. You know, I've worked with a coach for 3 years now, and that helps. But this stuff's not easy. But to keep front of mind, at least I do, don't believe your own BS.
I love that.
It helps me. One thing that really has helped me in the last 3 or 4 years is Muay Thai boxing. This is really weird. But when you are doing combat sports, there's no space for BS. There's no it's like it's the purest thing that there is. And so that has made me humble in so many ways that I never knew about. And so that, in a weird way, like training is some sort of combat sport. I know it sounds weird, but I think it can help with your humility.
You're right.
And it can help with and a lot of what goes into being a great leader, I think, is being humble. And so that's one weird thing that's helped me a little bit.
No, man. I mean,
some self-awareness.
I can imagine, like, you know, when you're I've never done, you know, anything like that, but you know, I've watched, you know, MMA, and I've, you know, and even the best grapplers and the best, you know, MMA artists, they tap out every now and again. I mean, you know, you got to tap out, and that takes humility, because it's like,
my God,
I'm either going to tap out or I'm going to die here, you know?
Well, and the thing for me is, you know, I weigh 220, getting and tapping out from a kid that weighs 160 pounds.
Oh man, yeah.
You know,
Lesson
like
in humility, right?
that's humbling, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, how does that even translate into going in and leading your team of 10 people?
Yeah.
I don't know how, but it does for me in a weird way. It's like, man,
Yeah, no.
you're not really the stuff, man. Like, you know, you need to go into this situation a little more humble,
Yeah.
because remember that kid last night that tapped you out
Yeah.
in 5 minutes.
Right.
You know, you might want to like listen to what people are telling you here. You know, it's a
Well,
weird
yeah.
thing, but it translates.
No, man. I mean, I think what you're saying too is we all have blind spots, man.
Right.
And whether it's in our leadership, and that's the benefit of the 360 or a coach or whatever, mentors, mastermind groups, but also like in the grappling, look, you're if you got to tap out, you're going to go back and reset and refresh. Like, what did I do? And what move did I make, or what did they exploit that made me tap out? And
Right.
so I think in leadership, it's really about seeing what we don't see and having others point out our blind spots. And yeah, man, that's not pleasant sometimes.
No, it's not.
I totally get
It's
that.
it's not, and I struggle with it. I think every leader struggles with it, and you know, you can. One of my favorite books is the autobiography of Steve Jobs by Walter Isaacson.
Yeah.
But the thing that sucks about that book is there's very little that you can pick up about leadership in that book. And
Yeah.
so my point is, like, you can't necessarily like take Elon Musk's leadership style,
No.
or Steve Jobs' leadership style, and put it into your little small business. It ain't, you ain't Steve Jobs.
Right.
You ain't Elon Musk. And so it's like, it's important to know what your lane, know where you're at in the game, and adapt an appropriate leadership style.
Yeah.
And because at times I've tried to do that. I've tried to have this kind of benevolent dictator type of thing, and it doesn't work at a
Doesn't work.
practical
Yeah.
level.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, I totally get that. Well, and then I think the shift from, that idea that I loved your phrase, benevolent dictator, to being able to be an empowerer, someone who empowers your people to be able to, take your company to a level that you couldn't do without that. And I think,
Right.
I was actually just talking with a really good friend of mine and a member of my own personal mastermind group. And, he was talking about the prevailing thought especially in America. He's not from America. But the prevailing thought in America is this bold, maverick, I can do it myself. And I'm going to do, the Frank Sinatra, I'll do it my way.
Right.
And really, if you look at the most successful leaders, the most successful businesses, they've got a team, and that
Right.
team is cohesive. They speak straight. They listen generously. They honor their commitments. They practice their blameless problem solving, and I think that's missing. I think in some leaders' minds is that it does take a team, and it does take the power of really tapping into the strengths of our people.
It totally does. And it's one of the hardest things about this. You can get through level 1, 2, or 3 of the game solo and maybe just willing it into existence. But
Yeah.
if you want to, however you measure success, whether it's revenue or customers or traction or whatever, you're going to have to build a team. You can't go it alone, and you're going to have to learn your leadership style and adapt and get better and better. And for me, one thing that I've done wrong is I've spent too many years just sideways and not growing, and not taking the feedback from my people and feedback from my customers. I think
Yeah.
if you listen to customers like intensely, it can help your leadership style. And because at the end of the day, that's what we're all trying to do. We're trying to solve a problem for our customer. We're trying to come together and build something together that solves a problem for people in the real world. And one tactical thing that's helped me with the business and my leadership style is even now today, we have 300,000 people using GreenPal. I still do at least an hour a day of direct customer support. So I
Cool.
jump in the live chat. I'll answer email tickets. I'll get on the phones, and I'll still do an hour a day of customer support. And so what that does is there's a weird gap that forms in every business between founder logic and customer logic.
Yeah.
And so that helps close that gap. And so that enables me to always kind of like know what our customer wants. And then when I'm talking to the team, they know that I'm not speaking from like guesses and assumptions or from a very top down type of thing. It's like, no, I'm in there with you guys. I'm in the trenches with you. I had a conversation with somebody yesterday, and this is what she's saying, and this is where the product is confusing people. We need to fix that. Here's why. I've spoken to them, and so bringing that commitment to get in the trenches with your team. You're never going to get anywhere if you're doing everything yourself. But work in kind of some time where you can like be in the trenches with your team and know what your customers want. It makes you more of an authentic leader, I think. And people want to follow somebody like that. People want to follow somebody who will jump onto the front lines with them from time to time.
Well, yeah, I think so too. I mean, it's really powerful to be able to see the owner of the company, the founder, getting in and doing stuff like that, to be able to really understand. You may think one way, and you may think, oh yeah, customers need this, but when you're actually interacting with them and they say, no, actually I don't need that, but I do need this, it can open your eyes to
totally
maybe another service offering.
Totally. It's free R&D.
Yeah.
And the reason why it just sounds like a simple thing, and it's like, duh, but I mean, it sucks. It's not fun. Like, you got a big team to run, you got a business to run. You don't want to do an hour of customer support.
Right.
It seems, but then after I committed to do it for 100 days in a row, 100 working days in a row. And after I did that, I was like, man, I should have been doing this all along. Like, this is free R&D. My team appreciates it because at times I was wrong. And they were bringing things to me, and I'm like, no, you don't understand. This is the vision. This is what we're trying to do. And then when you get in there and see it for yourself, it helps form your perspective a little bit better. So that's a tactical thing. I think that can help anybody.
Yeah, I think that's really great, and I hope the leaders, especially the founders who are watching or listening, really take that to heart. Because I might even ask them, how can you bridge that gap between what you think is going on with what your customers are really saying. And frankly, I think that's probably even true with your people. Like, how can you bridge the gap between what you think is happening and what they need and what they really need? And bridging that gap, I think, is really a growth opportunity for any leader.
Exactly. You have a value proposition for your customers. What do you do differently than anybody else in the market? What problem do you solve, and so on? But you also have a value proposition for your team, your people. If they can work for anybody, especially in this job market, why should they choose to work for you and your team and your mission versus anybody else? And if you don't have a strong value proposition for your people, then you're probably going to get stuck with people that aren't that great, that aren't that committed, that aren't that enthusiastic. So work on that. Why would anybody come work for you versus any other option available to them in the market?
Yeah. No, I love that. Hey, I want to maybe shift gears for just a second, because there was something that I heard you say on another podcast, or it might have been in some information that I was reading from you, but and it's near and dear to my heart, because I was a partner with my dad for almost 20 years. And I think, if my research is right, your dad had a really pivotal place in your growth journey. And so
Absolutely.
I'd love for you to just talk about what was that part that he played in your life.
Absolutely. So my dad was in the military when I was growing up. So I was living in a I guess you could say a military household.
Sure.
And so I think in the mid 90s, maybe it was 94, 95, I think he got tired of watching me play Super Mario Kart all day. And I'll never forget, he was like, hey, get off your butt. I talked to the neighbor. I got a gig for you. You're going to go mow the neighbor's yard. And I negotiated the price as $20. And I said, I don't mow yards. He said, yeah, you do.
You do now, right?
You do now.
Oh, that's great. I love that.
He still tells the story to this day. And he's like, oh,
that's great.
And he so And they said, yeah, you do. And he made me, he drugged me over there. I was pissed off,
Yep.
and I begrudgingly push mowed this guy's yard. And my dad helped me do it. He pointed out the spots I was missing, and and
That's
like
great.
literally walked the whole property with me after we were done. And then we knocked on the door, and I got paid $20. And I don't know. I remember it very clearly. Something clicked in my head that this is it. This is what it's all about. I can do this and make as much money as I want. I could work on this business rather than hitting
Mm.
my folks up for money all the time.
Oh,
And
man.
so that simple thing, he made me do something I didn't want to do, but that was kind of, that was
Yeah.
leadership. That
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
that was kind of a good example of a benevolent dictator.
Yeah, right. I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, benevolent. That was a benevolent dictator. He made me do something that he knew that I needed to do,
Yeah.
and it really worked out. He said, "Man, I'm so glad that I made you go mow the yard rather than bought you a pair of ice skates or something. I don't know
Yeah.
how you would have been different, like so that kind of worked out.
That's great.
So without him, without that lesson, man, I probably wouldn't have had as much of an interesting life as I've had to this point, and
Mm.
I wouldn't have been able to build the things I've been able to build and be a part of the teams that I've been able to assemble. A
Mm.
lot of things were spawned from that little moment in time.
Man, I think that's so. I'm so glad you shared that. Thank you for sharing that because I think that so oftentimes if we can think about those moments as, yeah, just I was a kid and, man, it just really pissed me off and I really didn't want to do that. But when you take it and you look at it as a learning and you kind of reframe it and go, man, that really taught me all of these values, the value of, hard work, the value of discipline, the value of what could be, the possibilities of if I do this for myself, I could make money. I don't have to ask my mom and dad for. I think those kinds of perspectives are so important. I'm just kind of curious, what's next for you on your growth journey? I mean, I know you've got this app and it's doing really well. What's next?
Yeah, it's 10 years in,
Yeah.
300,000 plus people using it. But it still feels like day one.
Love it. Yeah.
It still feels like we have so much further to go. And I made
Yeah.
a choice when I started the business a decade ago that no matter what, I was going to work on my best idea. And this has
Mm-hmm.
been my best idea in 10 years. And I was going to enjoy doing it. And so even though I've
Oh,
had some
nice.
100-hour weeks in the last 10 years, I haven't really worked a day since then because I've always wanted to work on this thing every day. And so that's a
Mm-hmm.
really that I mean that I guess that's how you define success is working on things that
Yeah.
you want to work on
Right.
and doing what it is you want to do and for me that's where I'm at. So I'm going to keep doing this as long as that's the case. If it ever gets to the point where I'm not good at it anymore, I've topped out, and we may find that to be the case, when we get over 100 people this time, or maybe we get to the next level in sales. But so long as I'm decent at it and I'm enjoying it, I'm
Mm,
going to keep building it. We haven't raised any outside money or anything, so we're kind of in charge of our own destiny, which is good.
that's good.
A lot of
Yeah.
times, as a founder, you kind of have to be careful of that. If you
Sure.
raise capital from investors, you're no longer in the driver's seat, and so
Right. Right.
we're very fortunate as far as that's concerned. But for me, I'm very much still in the video game of business, and maybe
I
I'm
love
on
that.
level 7, and I want to get to Bowser. I want to get to Mike Tyson.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and
I know
and
those
and so,
games.
yeah, if you know those games, then you remember that. Then you remember that when you got beat, when you lost, it sent you to a screen that said "Game Over."
Yeah.
Push start to continue. and
Yep.
and that's kind of how business is. That's kind of how life is. Like,
Love
yeah,
that.
you lost, but push start to continue. Game over,
Yeah.
push start to continue. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where we're at. It's a lot of trial and error,
Sure.
and it's trial and error building the business. It's trial and error with how I recruit my team and my leadership style still to this day, because managing engineers and developers and designers is very different than managing mechanics and crew foremen and salespeople.
Right.
So that's had to evolve. So I'm still challenged by it, still having fun with it. So I'm just going to keep doing more of what we're already doing pretty well at.
Ah, I love that, Bryan. Last thing I'll ask you is, I think growth is a lot about managing and becoming aware of your own emotions and the emotional energy within yourself. How have you managed to kind of capture that, be aware of that as you've grown the company and just kind of as you shared your own personal growth journey? How did you tap into that emotional state or the emotions of growth that you kind of had to navigate through as you've grown your company?
Yeah, screwed it up, did it wrong, and then really went through the painful moment of realize, man, I screwed that up. And I'll
Yeah.
never forget, it was maybe 15 years ago in my first business. Um, we had a weekly team meeting, and and man, everybody was complaining about wanting to get a pay raise, and man, we just flat out couldn't afford it. And I remember I blew up in front of everybody.
Mm.
And I was just like, we're doing everything we can to keep the lights on around here. This was through the 2008 financial crisis, and
Yeah.
all you guys can do is complain about pay raises, and it was a very victimized reaction, I guess you could say. And I just stormed out
Oh man.
and went home. And I thought, man, I could have handled that better. And I remember somebody really wise told me once, it's okay to make mistakes. It's not okay to repeat them.
Yeah.
And I thought from that moment forward, I'm never going to do that again. I am never
Mm.
going to react.
Yeah.
And so in the book, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People by Dr. Stephen Covey, one
Yeah.
of the best books on leadership. I wish I had read it when I was 23 years old or 22 years old. I didn't pick it up until about 8 years ago. But one of the things in one of the key, I think one of the seven habits is 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 putting a pause between stimulus and response. So
Yeah.
something has stimulated you, where people
Mm.
pissed off because they want a pay raise and you can't afford it. Put a pause between that and your response, and it's so
Yeah.
hard to do,
Yeah.
but it's something that I've tried to carry with me. Is like, okay, I just got an email from somebody and it has pissed me off. Let me just put a pause there. Let me give it an hour and then respond rather than fire
Yeah.
that email off. And
So
this is
good.
simple stuff that everybody kind of knows, but it's really hard to do.
Yeah.
And I think it's like when you screw it up, it's okay. You screwed it up. It's okay to make a mistake. It's not okay to repeat it.
Right.
And putting a pause between the stimulus and response. I think it's a Viktor Frankl thing that that
Yeah. You're
that,
right.
that, that Stephen Covey put in the book. I try to remind myself of that every day, and I don't
Mm.
think I've screwed up that bad since. So I'm pretty pleased about that.
Love
Uh,
that. Man, Bryan, one of the things that I love about this conversation, I think is, and I think for the listeners, for the leaders that are listening, I don't care where you are on your leadership journey. It's really, so oftentimes I think that on social media, we think that entrepreneurs have just got it all figured out, man.
mm,
And it's a straight line. And what I'm hearing you say is, man, you've had to like bob and weave and do it's not a straight line, and you don't have it all figured out, but you learned along the way from your mistakes and from the
that's right.
failure, so quote unquote failures. I'm wondering if I mean, I wonder if that resonates with you. And then if
Absolutely.
so, like, what would you say to an emerging leader, especially maybe new in their leadership journey and their growth path?
Yeah, nobody teaches us how to be a good entrepreneur. Nobody teaches us how to be a good leader.
Yeah.
Nobody teaches us how to be a good manager. We're not taught this anywhere. In school, we're taught how to be good workers. We're
Yeah.
taught, maybe even in business school, we're not taught
Yeah.
how to do this stuff effectively. And so the
Mm-hmm.
only way you can really learn how to do it is to get in there and screw it up a couple of times, make mistakes, but don't repeat them,
Yeah.
and go through the reps. Go through the reps of, okay, I hired this person and they left after a month. Why did they leave?
Hmm.
Why did they go work for my competitor? What am I doing wrong? Okay, all right, let me adjust. And it's like it's the only way. And to
Hmm.
go back to combat sports as a metaphor, you can you can watch every YouTube video you want to watch. You can read every book you want to read on jujitsu or boxing or
Yeah.
whatever. But you won't learn a thing until you actually spar.
Get in the ring.
And you can do drills, you can hit a bag, but until you start sparring, that's when you really learn. That's when you really learn how to defend yourself. And
Yeah.
and so business and life is really the same way. You won't learn. You can read a million John Maxwell books. You can
Yep.
read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That's great. I encourage you. You do.
Yeah.
But you won't learn anything until you get 1 or 2 people to join you on your mission and accomplish a purpose or cause together. And you really won't learn what your style is. You really won't learn what your blind spots are and tactically how you're going to do this until you get in there and put in the reps.
Yeah.
And so I think the only way you can learn this stuff is to do it, is to live it, is to be committed to it, to understand it's what's making your life interesting. It's what's giving you purpose.
Yeah.
I know of no other way to do it other than to screw it up and fix it and get better and better and better.
Oh man, I love that, Bryan. Man, thank you so much for just sharing your journey with us here today. I mean, I always love having these conversations, especially for people like you who have gone through, growth, not only business wise, but also in their own leadership journey and in their own personal growth. It's so, I think it's so instructive. I always, one of the reasons why I do this podcast is, selfishly, I like to learn. And, then I like to be able to share that learning with the people that I impact and the people that I work for and with. And so thank you for sharing that, man. I appreciate it. How can people, get in touch with you? How do they, if they want their yard mowed, how do they get a hold of GreenPal?
Yeah, life's too short to mow your own grass. So just use GreenPal. Go to greenpal.com, sign up. Anybody wants to hit me up. I actually spend most of my time on socials on Instagram. So just
cool.
shoot me a DM there, Bryan M. Clayton, and I'll respond back to you there.
Awesome. Well, Bryan, thank you so much. It's been a delight to have this conversation. Thanks so much for being here.
Well, thank you, David. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, you bet.